I arrived early like I always do, 15 minutes early to be exact. I didn't want to risk being the last one through that heavy glass door looking out of place and out of time. My heels clicked softly on the marble as I stepped into the foyer, holding my breath. The dress I wore was deep burgundy, simple, but carefully stitched. I'd taken in the sides myself, re-hemmed it after dinner shifts. It had hung in the closet for 3 years, waiting for a moment that felt worth pulling it out for. I thought this might be it. The house was colder than I expected. Everything gleamed, white walls, silver fixtures, no warmth. A woman I'd never met took my coat. Another woman I had met, Adrien's soon-to-be mother-in-law, walked over with a smile so tight it barely reached her cheeks. "We've saved you a spot just down here," she said, gesturing toward the end of the long dining table. "Near the kitchen. It's quieter there." I nodded, thanked her, and walked to my place, passing wine glasses already half full and laughter already in motion. My chair wobbled a little as I sat. I pressed my palms into my lap and reminded myself not to wrinkle the fabric. Conversations swirled around me, business stocks, vacation properties. I sipped water from a crystal glass and smiled when anyone made eye contact, which wasn't often. Then I heard it. "She can't sit next to the mayor, she's dressed like a waitress," said a voice too clear to be mistaken. Laughter, brief, sharp. Someone clinked a spoon against a glass. I didn't know who. I didn't lift my eyes to find out. I folded my napkin twice, once more than needed, and tucked it beneath my hand. Adrien hadn't arrived yet. Or maybe he was already inside, too far from my end to hear. Too far to notice how still I'd gone. I looked at the plate in front of me and wondered how I'd ever get through the first course. I kept my eyes on the table, pretending to read the menu that had already been taken away. No one at my end seemed interested in refilling my glass, so I nursed the water I had. The laughter had moved on golf property taxes, flights to Aspen. The kind of talk that skimmed above me like planes I never boarded. Discomfort doesn't rattle me like it used to. I've worked through worse. I once cleaned an entire surgical ward with a sprained ankle because the rent was due. I've stood at a register with coins counted out to the cent, just to make sure Adrien never missed a school lunch or field trip. There's no humiliation I haven't made peace with. But this kind of humiliation, it didn't sting because it was loud. It stung because it was quiet. Approved, shared, accepted. I looked toward Adrien. He was laughing gently at something his fiancée had whispered. He leaned in, nodded at her father, lifted his wine. He looked good, confident, like the man I raised him to be. I was proud of him. Still am, even here. But then he looked up. His eyes searched the room casually, then settled on me. I don't know what he saw, maybe my stillness, or the way I held my hands together in my lap, like I was waiting for permission to breathe. Maybe the fact that I wasn't eating. His smile faded. Just a little. His brows drew in. I gave him nothing. No signal. No rescue. Just a small nod to say I was fine. He tilted his head slightly like he was about to ask something. But someone at his table pulled him back into conversation. A toast was made. Glasses lifted. I clinked mine late and too softly for anyone to notice. The next course arrived, something delicate with crab and dill, and I thanked the waiter out of habit. The woman beside me didn't look up from her phone. Then I heard the second comment, and this time Adrien heard it too. The coffee had just been poured when the talk turned to venues. Napa, Charleston somewhere with a view and the right kind of lighting. Someone joked about blocking out half the guest list just to keep the seating chart manageable. The fiancé's mother laughed too loud at her own punchline. I smiled barely and stirred my coffee twice before setting the spoon back down. I couldn't feel my hands. Not from cold, just a numbness that settled in the longer I stayed invisible. A server passed by with dessert, something stacked and sugared far too pretty to eat. I nodded in thanks. It smelled like fruit I couldn't name. Across the table, someone adjusted their cufflink. Another checked their phone. I tried not to look at Adrien, but I wanted to. I needed to. Then came the whisper. It wasn't even said to me. That's what made it worse. Like I wasn't even worth speaking at. Just another quiet jab tossed casually between two people who forgot I was still seated. At least she won't be paying for any of this, the fiancé's mother said, tilting her head toward me like I was part of the floral arrangement. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. For one long second, I felt like I'd slid under the table and become part of the floor. Then I saw him, Adrien. His fork paused midair. His eyes shifted to me first, then to her. His face didn't change, not at first. But I saw it. The way the corners of his mouth tightened, the way his jaw locked just slightly. He pushed his chair back. Not with anger. Not loud. Just enough that the sound of it over the tile caught the attention of 3 people near him. He stood slowly, wiped his hands with the cloth napkin, and set it down beside his untouched dessert. The room quieted not all at once, but enough. He picked up his glass, and then he spoke. Adrien didn't raise his voice. He didn't clear his throat or wait for permission. He simply stood there, tall and unmoving, like he'd decided something and was done negotiating with himself about it. He lifted his glass not in celebration, but as if to steady the room. You talk a lot about money, he said calmly. About what it buys. About who belongs where. His eyes moved slowly from one face to the next, resting nowhere for too long. But let me tell you what wealth actually looks like. No one laughed this time. Even the cutlery seemed to stop. He turned slightly and gestured toward me. Not sharply, not dramatically. Just enough to make it clear who he meant. That woman raised me with everything she had. He continued. I never once went to school in shoes with holes. I never missed a field trip because of fees. When my textbooks cost more than we expected, she worked through pneumonia to make sure I had them on time. I felt my hands start to shake in my lap. I pressed my palms together, afraid that if I didn't, they might give me away. I hadn't known he remembered the pneumonia. I hadn't known he noticed. She didn't do it for praise, he said. She didn't do it so I could sit at tables like this. She did it so I'd grow up decent, so I'd know the difference between status and character. I heard someone inhale sharply. A chair creaked, but no one interrupted him. If any of you think money gives you the right to look down on her, Adrien went on, then you don't understand wealth at all. He lowered his glass untouched. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the air itself had shifted. Son, it was just a joke, her father said, clearing his throat like he could smooth the air back down. Adrien didn't even look at him. It wasn't funny. No one offered a rebuttal. The mayor studied the rim of his wineglass like it held an answer. Across the table, someone set their fork down, a little too gently, as if afraid to make a sound. The fiancé leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Please, sit down." Adrien turned to her, his voice calm but certain. "If you can't respect the woman who made me, we have nothing to celebrate." She blinked fast but said nothing else. No apology. No defense. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked toward me, slow and sure. His hand reached out, palm up, steady. I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I once carried on my back when he was too tired to walk home. The young man I watched walk into his first job interview in a second-hand suit. And now the man who was standing between me and a room full of people who thought they knew what mattered. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I wasn't used to being chosen not like this, not in front of everyone. But I took his hand. The linen napkin dropped from my lap to the floor as I stood. No one reached down to pick it up. We didn't slam doors. We didn't say another word. We just left. The hallway was quiet. Our footsteps were soft against the polished floor. When we reached the coat rack, Adrien helped me with mine. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't need to. Outside, the air was cooler than I remembered. The wind had picked up just enough to remind me that I was still alive, still standing, still held together. Adrien unlocked the car and opened the passenger door without a word. I stepped in. He closed it gently, then walked around to his side. I slipped off my shoes at the door like I always did. Adrien didn't ask where to sit. He went straight to the little kitchen table, still in his suit knees, pressed slightly together under the cramped space. I hung my coat on the same hook it's always hung on, then moved quietly to put the kettle on. We didn't say much. Not yet. He stared at the fridge like it was something new. The magnets hadn't changed in years, one shaped like fruit, a faded postcard from Chicago, a spelling test he got a perfect score on in 4th grade. I'd never taken it down. Right beside it was a drawing him, me, and a dog we never had. We used to laugh about that, the imaginary golden retriever he named Toast. I should have walked out the moment they sent your invitation late, he said finally, voice soft. I turned from the stove. You didn't know. He shook his head. I should have. I sat across from him, rested my hands on the table. The wood had scratches from years of plates and keys and elbows. It was the same table I used to sew at used-to-grade nursing assistant exams, used to write grocery lists late at night, when I wasn't sure if the card would go through. For the first time that evening, my throat caught, not from embarrassment, not from trying to hold myself together, but from something warmer, something that settled into the center of me and made the silence feel safe. The kettle clicked off, but neither of us moved to pour. I'm proud of you, I said, finally. He looked up. You shouldn't have had to go through that. I've been through worse, I said, and I smiled. Not to minimize it, just because it was true. He smiled back this time all the way. I got up and brought us tea in mismatched mugs. He took his without comment. We sat there, 2 people, 1 tiny table, and I realized this was the first time all night I felt full. The knock came just after 8. Soft, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they had the right to be there. I was still in my robe, tea half steeped on the counter. When I opened the door, she was standing there alone. No makeup. Eyes puffy, clutching something in her hand. I didn't know where else to go, she said quietly. She opened her palm. The ring rested in it, gleaming too much for a moment like this. He said he needed time, she murmured. I wanted to tell you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I stepped back just slightly enough to open the door wider, but I didn't say, come in. She didn't cross the threshold. I thought it was just teasing, she said. I thought you knew it wasn't serious. I didn't answer right away. My eyes moved to the ring, then back to her. But you laughed, I said. You laughed when they said I didn't belong. She looked down. Her fingers closed over the ring like she'd only just remembered she was holding it. I thought I could fix it, she whispered. Some things break quietly, I said, and they stay broken. I wasn't angry. That's what surprised me. There was no heat in my voice, just a coolness that had taken root somewhere deep and calm. I didn't want her punished. I just wanted my morning back. My kitchen, my quiet. You should go, I said gently. Let him have the space he asked for. She nodded. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She turned and walked down the hall, her steps muffled by the old carpet. I stood there a moment longer, then slowly closed the door. Not to shut her out, but to hold my own peace in. I returned to the kitchen. The kettle had boiled dry. I filled it again and turned the knob. The silence didn't ache this time. It breathed. I went back to work the following Tuesday, same as always. Same bus route, same early morning light, catching the sidewalk just before the clinic opened. Nothing about the building had changed, but I felt different, walking through the door like something inside me had shifted its weight. The receptionist slid a mug across the counter before I even asked. "Chamomile," she said. "You looked like you could use it." I thanked her and tied my badge around my neck. The waiting room was already half full. Parents with tired eyes, kids swinging their legs off plastic chairs, the low hum of a daytime television. No one was really watching. I took vitals, logged charts, asked the same gentle questions I'd asked 1,000 times. The work settled me. It reminded me that I knew how to be useful without needing to explain myself. Late morning, a woman stepped in, holding a little boy by the hand. He clutched a toy truck, dragging it across the floor as he walked. I recognized her before she spoke sharp, haircut, tailored coat. The mayor's assistant. She hesitated when she saw me, then smiled awkward and unsure. "You're Adrien's mom, right?" I nodded and reached for a clipboard. "I'll take you back." As we walked down the hall, she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "He was right to leave," she said. "That room wasn't for people with hearts." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I handed her the clipboard, pointed her toward the exam room, and turned back toward the desk. My hands were steady. My steps were sure. For the first time in days, I felt tall, not because someone defended me, but because I didn't feel the need to shrink. On my lunch break, I sat alone at the small table in the staff room, unwrapped my sandwich, and watched the clock tick forward. I wasn't replaying the dinner. I wasn't bracing for the next call. I was just there. That evening, as I locked up my bag and headed home, I found myself thinking about Friday nights, about a small kitchen table, and about the quiet kind of plans that don't need a guest list. Adrien didn't go back to her. He didn't say much about the breakup either, just packed up his things and signed a lease 3 blocks from mine. It was a modest place, clean, quiet, close enough that I could see his porch light through my kitchen window if I leaned the right way. Every Friday, like clockwork, he came over. I always made something warm. Roasted vegetables, sometimes baked chicken if I had time. Cornbread, most weeks, because he liked it best, the way I made it dense, a little sweet. No fuss. We'd eat at my small table, same one we'd sat at the night we walked out of that party. Still a little wobbly on one leg. Still ours. We didn't talk about the engagement or the wedding that never happened. There were no flowers to arrange, no seating charts to agonize over. Instead, we talked about books. About the ones he was reading, the ones I pretended to have time for. He'd bring over paperbacks with notes in the margins, and I'd ask about the scribbled thoughts, like they were headlines. One night, I taught him how to make cornbread himself. He overmixed the batter and the edges came out tough, but he was proud anyway. He left the leftovers in my fridge wrapped in foil and labeled in his handwriting Friday's proof. There was no playlist, no guests, just the clink of dishes and the low hum of a neighbor's TV through the wall. Sometimes he'd help with the washing up, sleeves rolled. Other nights he'd sit and tell me about a patient who made him laugh or a stray cat that followed him home from the bus stop. It wasn't glamorous. No champagne, no speeches, no centerpieces, but in those hours the world was quieter. I didn't have to guard my voice or weigh my words. I just existed fully, safely with my son across the table. And when he'd leave coat slung over his arm, he'd always say the same thing before stepping out. Same time next week, I'd nod, close the door behind him, and let the silence settle like a blanket. The invitation had come in a plain envelope. No gold leaf, no calligraphy. Just a typed note from the clinic board asking if I'd speak at the annual fundraiser. Nothing fancy. 5 minutes. Say something about care, it said. So I stood there that night, behind a modest podium in the community center gym, beneath strings of paper lanterns and folding chairs. My dress was the same one from that dinner months ago. I'd pressed it the night before, took extra care with the sleeves. It didn't feel like armor this time. Just fabric. Just mine. A volunteer cleared her throat and introduced me. Delora Green, she said, nurse mentor and mother to one of the kindest men in our city. The room clapped. Not politely, warmly, genuinely. I took the mic and spoke plainly about the years at the clinic, about the patients who came in without insurance, but not without stories. I talked about steady hands and listening ears and why kindness matters more than title or salary. I didn't mention that night or that table. I didn't need to. Some things don't need to be retold once they've been lived through and outgrown. Afterward, people came up to shake my hand. One woman told me her daughter was going into nursing because of me. Another said she remembered when Adrien volunteered in high school and how polite he was. I smiled, took their words, folded them gently into a part of myself that used to only carry proof of what I wasn't. I took the bus home. The air was cool again, leaves turning. Back in my apartment, I set the oven to preheat. I peeled 2 soft bananas and mashed them with the back of a spoon. The recipe was simple. I didn't need to look. Adrien was coming by. I wanted the place to smell like something sweet. The table was already set, just 2 plates, 2 mugs. The lights were dim. My name rested quietly in the air, no longer something I had to defend. And when he knocked, I didn't hesitate to open the door.